evening and welcome once again to Gaming Under the Influence. I'm Mike here with Alex, coming to you from GreenDragonCVR in Woodbridge to talk about video games. How are you, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good, man. How are you?
I'm well. Just finished Death Stranding 2 less than a week ago.
Nice.
Moved on to some other things in the meantime, but yeah, I've been itching to talk about my experience with the game, which is overall a fantastic game.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm still chugging away at it.
Yeah.
It's a good sequel, I will say that. It's,
oh, yeah.
I think they did a lot of the right things.
Yeah.
But
I think so too. I think there's not many things like Death Stranding 1 or 2 in video games.
Yeah, no.
We've said before, like, few people other than Kojima could even attempt something like that.
Yeah, at least not in the AAA space.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not too familiar with, what kinds of indie games there are and stuff. I don't really follow it too well, so maybe there is more weird things like
there
that.
There are definitely
that
strange
space.
ideas floating around, but not with that budget and technology behind them.
No.
That's the thing. Like, the guy, because of the weight his name carries, has been handed the keys to the kingdom, proverbially, right?
Yeah.
He has all the money he wants to work with. He has a top-notch engine.
Yeah.
He has a technical competence behind his ideas, and few people with ideas that out there could make a game at this scale and at that budget and that looks like that and plays like that. So
yeah, if you haven't played any Kojima game, you're severely missing out on some of the best this medium has to offer. Really,
that's for sure. Yeah. That's true of all his games, but Death Stranding, I think, is something particularly unique.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the second one has some strengths, that's for sure. I think that in particular, it's a more character-focused story. The dynamic between the protagonist and the crew of people he associates with over the course of the story is really fleshed out. There's almost like an ad hoc family that forms, and they're helping him get through a period of grief, and it's a human story. You really become attached to the characters. In that respect, I like it a lot. And I also think that the combat and a lot of the mechanics have been refined, in a ways that the first game, if it had rough edges, those would be the rough edges, I guess. At least some people would say.
Yeah, it seems like the second one, they kind of cleaned it up a little bit, made it more approachable, right?
Yeah.
A little more...
all the rough edges have been filed away.
Yeah.
It's a shiny AAA game, all right.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. For sure.
And the question comes up, though, is it better than the first game? Because critical reception would suggest that it is.
Yeah.
I think the Metacritic is like 90 or 89 now for number 2, and the first one was 82.
Yeah, the first one
cracked an 80.
Pretty low. I mean,
it
was a very divisive game when it came out. I think
that's right. It was memed as a walking simulator, or merely a walking simulator, for quite some time.
And you know how the internet is. Same with like Cyberpunk. Once it catches fire, everybody jumps on it and just piles on it. I've seen over the course of the years, though, people have come around on it.
They have, especially after the PC release.
Yeah, and that's not going to change the Metacritic for the PS4 version.
No, it's not.
But it's, people have kind of opened their eyes and actually, give it a shot. Once like the meaning kind of goes away and people stop like clowning on it and, actually give it a try over the years, people have come around and have truly appreciated what it is. Yeah,
it's highly regarded now, I'd say.
Oh, for sure. And, that goes without saying that the second one came out with even higher scores, even though we maybe don't think it's a better game.
Personally, I don't think it's a better game, no. I think, in fact, it loses a lot of what made the first one special. And I think we can talk about that today a little bit. Yeah. If you were to check out the Metacritic scores, we were just looking at them, and I think some of the reviews at the top of the page say things like, this is the game the first one should have been. It satisfies the blockbuster ambitions of the first game, and this and that kind of thing. I think critically, like, a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah.
They'll look through the reviews, they'll say
you're probably
things
right
like
about that.
Like, the combat is not so frustrating or demanding, and it's just more of a smooth and accessible experience.
Even just more combat. Like,
that too,
It feels like there wasn't much of it in the first, which is fine, but...
there was some combat, for sure, in some big boss battles, but it was more focused on traversal.
Yeah, more on the traversal and the journey, whereas this one kind of, the sequel seems to dabble more equally in both. There's
it incorporates combat into most of the missions, to my experience.
They send you to enemy camps more frequently to recover stuff, which obviously, you can stealth and sneak around, but you still have to encounter them and neutralize some enemies. You have to fight, right? So there's definitely a lot more of combat scenarios and stuff like that going on. Maybe even some more boss fights. I don't know how many more there are than
in this game.
There's about the same amount, or
there's some repeated boss fights that kind of pushes the number higher than the first game, but I think overall it's got about the same.
Yeah.
In this review here we're looking at for number 2, the guy says more action, more variety, less punishment, and more fun to play. And I think honestly all that's true.
Yeah,
but
I would agree with that.
That's true, but does that make it a better
But does
game?
it make it better? Exactly.
Yep.
That's the ultimate question.
Yeah.
Whereas it depends. Maybe it's subjective and depends what you're looking at. But I think in terms of what we'd be looking at, the first one is more, mysterious and like aloof and very.
I think the word subjective is important here because if the subjective experience, the mere pleasure of experiencing the game is what qualifies it as good or bad, then you could make the case that number 2 is more pleasurable to experience for the reasons this guy lists. But I think if you're measuring the strength of the idea and how well it's expressed in playable mechanics as the medium of expression, then I think the first one edges this out in a pretty significant manner. Like, there's little things that people cite in number 2 that make it more fun to play and more accessible than the first. And some of those things are the fact that, for example, you don't have to switch anymore between lethal and non-lethal munitions when you're fighting humans and BTs. In the first game, if you brought lethal munitions to fight people, you would kill them and it would trigger a giant explosion in the middle of the map. So you were incentivized.
Cool,
yeah, it was cool.
It,
You were incentivized to bring lethal and non-lethal munitions. So in case you encountered BTs, you could use the lethal ones. And if you found the humans, you could use the non-lethal ones. Although some of them work for both. I think you got some blood bullets at some point that made your non-lethal munitions work with the BTs as well. And that's gone now. You have like multi-purpose ammunition.
So you can use an assault rifle on BTs. You can use it on enemies without worrying about void outs. It's just it's a lot more streamlined in that sense.
They do explain it in terms of the fiction, actually. I think they say something about how the guns are like modulated to shoot a certain velocity at human beings, and that even one of the plot points is that one of the antagonists learns to disable those restrictions on the weapons, and he starts distributing them across Australia. So it's not like they haven't thought about why or haven't made it fit into the world. But in the first game, I thought that those kinds of restrictions imposed on the player, like they were there because they suited the concept so well, and
it made sense in the world, obviously.
To me, that was one of the strengths of that game, the way it was willing to adopt like unconventional and sometimes even almost refractory mechanics, willing to impose on the player for the sake of the idea that Kojima's trying to work with.
Only he would have the balls to release that game.
I think so too. And
the original, that is.
Yeah, for sure. And even with the traversal, the fact that in this game, like early on in the game, before I left the first couple of areas in Australia, I found a bandit camp. I stole a truck there. And after that first, I was less than 3 or 4 hours in. The game took me 55 hours to beat maybe. And after the first couple of hours, I never went anywhere without a vehicle again.
Truck.
There wasn't a single place on the map that I had to explore by foot or using the carriers or using any other.
I've noticed that too. I haven't finished the game, but I've noticed so far since I've gotten the truck, I've been trucking it everywhere with a freaking thing full of loaded up with metals and
That's what I did too. I just every time I found a road, I dumped the stuff there. I built most of the roads in this game, not all of them, because there frankly wasn't a need to do it. Like even if you didn't have a road, you just drive up the mountain.
Just drive out.
You get tires for your truck that allow you to drive up steep snowy mountains early in the game, or midway through the game, I'd say. So
so it seems like they even give you a lot more things and that just tools in general, like you said, those tires, and like I saw there's like gloves, there's so many more items and things you can use. It kind of makes it easier to tackle things however you want to do it. Like you said, you can just drive around everywhere if you want, or you can. That's
how it was in this game. I mean, to me it struck me that any other method of traversal is suboptimal. Like why would I load up a carrier that when you load up the item carriers, it costs you chiral crystals to drag items around. So why would I do that?
When
I could just put them in a truck, right?
It kind of actually makes it seem like it's maybe even more restrictive, because why?
In a way, it is.
Like the way one worked was, I think you would unlock things in more of a progression like manner, where like so you would get the carriers first, so you'd use them, because you don't have a truck yet.
And there's also like
you'd unlock the trike and then the truck, and then so
that's true.
Sort of
they were given to you in a logical manner that incentivized you to use them. But
whereas
I think
here, if you have the truck right away, why use carriers or anything else? Because you're just gonna just drive around everywhere. It's easier.
In the first game too, though, there was whole sections of the map, major sections of the map, that you simply couldn't drive vehicles through. You know,
That's right.
there was like Hartman's lab there,
was
high up
even
in the mountains.
I remember like a valley, with a river.
I think that like it was near. I don't know if it was called Central Knot City or something like that. Yeah. There was an area with a big swampy expanse with a bandit camp. And after you passed through that, there was a river going up this like rocky, mountainous terrain that you simply couldn't get a truck through without destroying your cargo, unless you went through the effort to build the road, right?
Right.
So building the roads to me in the first game, like that felt like a major accomplishment for me.
Yeah.
Because at first, traversing the map, and we talked about this so many times, traversing the map in the first instance in game number 1 was such an experience. It was so difficult, right? Especially to the places you couldn't bring a car through.
Yeah, that's right.
And even the places you could bring a car through, driving there was rough until you built the roads.
Yeah, and the bike was kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah, like you would damage your cargo all the time because you hit a rock or something.
Yeah, you hit a little rock and
your cargo beeps, you lose your S ranking. So the first game, like, you were seriously incentivized to partake in the systems, the various systems on offer, I think, because of the fact that you couldn't drive everywhere. Where you could drive, you would damage your cargo. You built the roads, and it felt like you really transitioned the world into another phase where your traversal became easier. But here,
that's right.
Here, like, I drove everywhere, even if you
more
don't have
optional.
a road.
Yeah, it just seems now that you put it that way, it seems like it's kind of watered down. Like, they give you more stuff to do, but there's not really an incentive, or more things to use.
I think so.
But there's not really an incentive to use them. You just take your truck.
There wasn't a single place on the map that you couldn't drive through.
Yeah.
Not one. The whole game, I just drove everywhere.
Just drove around,
Put my cargo in a truck and drove there.
That's
up
kind
the
of
mountains,
a shame.
down the mountains, across the tar expanses, everywhere you drove. You got major like battery upgrades too. That meant you never ran out of batteries.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, they overcharge too now. Yeah. It's like it's a bit of a shame because it kind of feels like while the sequel is very expansive and in some ways, but also feels a little restrictive because of these decisions, right? You're not really encouraged to go outside of your comfort zone and use the other tools because you're drive around everywhere.
And it's certainly more accessible because you're never going to get to the point where you're halfway through an order and you're like, damn, I can't get there. Like, I can't do it. I don't have enough resources. In the first game, it happened tons of times. Even if you're using a carrier, you're trying to go up a mountain, you run out of crystals or something like that. And it forces you to reload and to plan out how you're going to do it better and to try and optimize your approach. The traversal itself was like almost like a puzzle to figure out. And here, there's no such puzzle. It just simply isn't there.
You're just kind of playing.
You get in the truck, you load stuff in, you just go. That's it. You're going to get there. No worries.
Yeah, it's a little less exciting when you put it that way.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's more accessible for sure. But in approaching the game that way, they've sacrificed what made the first one what it was, I think, right? The fact that it was a traversal game, first and foremost, and each place you had to get to was a unique puzzle that you had to plan how to get there optimally.
Yeah, that's right.
You had to use some tool or another to do it, and there was whole sections of the map that you couldn't drive through. There was no roads there, and so you had to construct a zipline network.
Right.
That was one of the things I loved about the first game, actually. I put a lot of time into plotting out a zipline network and figuring out that way you could get to each of the places you needed to make deliveries without damaging your cargo, without struggling across mountains.
That's right. I remember that now. You couldn't drive someplace and you had to zip line.
There was no road.
Remember you could even zip line from one end all the way to the other.
We could. We made a half-hour-long video there of us using the travel network. The roads ended. You got on the zip line. You go up the mountains and stuff. Here, I didn't build a single zip line, dude. The whole game. There was no point.
That's kind of a shame.
The roads went most places, and where the roads didn't go, there was like pre-built monorail networks that you could zip line on yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
And at the end of the day, you barely need to use either of those because even if they didn't exist, you just drive where you need to go, right? There was, it simply didn't impose on you like the first game does. So it's more accessible, and I guess that accounts for why the reception was so much better, right? People were like, oh, this is easier to play. Like, I don't have to think about changing my bullet types. I don't have to worry about anything. I just get in my car, I drive,
Definitely more mainstream and more easily digestible.
The rough edges have been filed off, but I think those rough edges are what defined the first game.
It kind of made it stand out. It was a little more special because of it, I think so.
It was literally a walking simulator.
It is.
So what?
One of the reviews puts it in a good way that it's about the journey and not really the destination, right? You're kind of just...
It's a walking game. So what? Why can't somebody make a walking game? People say that like I'm supposed to understand why that's automatically bad. Like, it is. And I liked it because of that. And I know I'm not alone in that. Many people did.
If that's the case, then is Disco Elysium like a narrative game or a
dice game?
I don't know.
It's not a slight against the game to define its central conceit. In any case, you haven't told us why that's bad, and like I said, you know, the first game, there was a richness to it because of the way that you had to progress through the world. And not only that, but when you finally accomplished the construction of your travel network, you really felt like the world changed. It went from so hard to get everywhere to suddenly you can drive smoothly, bypass stuff. Now it's like, whatever, I drove on the road, but I was driving on the beach anyway, so what's the difference, right?
Yeah, like, I guess, yeah, from like the start of the first game to the end, you're right. The whole, like, the difference is astounding. You really couldn't get some places before, like you said, until you built a zipline thing and added some roads or whatever. Whereas then in this one, second one feels like it's almost more optional, like you said.
It is,
just drive around everywhere. Yeah, it's nice to build roads. It's a little bit easier, but sure, yeah, but it's not like
you couldn't drive there before.
Yeah,
right?
it's not like you had to, or else you can't get there. Like
so for me, that was one thing that, like, not to say, like, I enjoyed the experience immensely. Actually, like, I still built most of the roads. I liked getting in my car, loading it up, and you can put on the music player they have now. You know,
great time with 2 for sure.
The soundtrack's great. You just buzz around listening to your radio. You know, you stop to fight some BTs for the crystals and stuff. But overall, like, the way that I approached it was radically different than the first game, where I was like, all right, man, I got to get to Hartman's lab. It's like in the middle of the mountains there, and then you have to carry like a bunch of heavy, delicate cargo. It was super difficult. You had to make sure you had enough crystals for your carrier. You had to like plot your path through the mountains carefully. Now I don't even, like, shortly into the game, I don't even bother plotting my course anymore, because I knew I could just drive wherever I needed to go.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah. So much more accessible in that respect, but I definitely think what defined the first game was lost in that transition somewhat.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it definitely seems that way.
Yeah. And the same goes to a lesser extent for the combat and the way you don't have to manage the kinds of munitions you're using. There's no forethought required anymore in how you approach traversal nor combat, I don't think.
Yeah, I've only mainly used like I think early on I used the mazer gun to be stealthy, but then I switched to the assault rifle at some point, and I haven't really looked back since.
Yeah, man, I got machine guns and shotguns, and I use them the whole game for everything. That's it. You know, just one kind. I only did the quest to upgrade the machine gun to level 2, and that's pretty much all I focused on the whole game. It was sufficient to get through it on brutal difficulty. I was playing.
We're both playing it on brutal, and it's weird that it's there's so much more variety of things to use, but they don't really incentivize you to use it.
No, you're not incentivized at all. That does suck
in that regard, right? But
it does. And even like the way that you get resources now, like in the first game, you wanted to build the roads, you needed resources, and you had to ultimately like raid the camps. There was an incentive to participate in combat, even if that wasn't the crucial component of the game. But here, like, while you can still raid camps for materials, there's mines all around the map.
That's right.
Where you can go and just
buy a
ton of resources. It makes raiding camps for resources also suboptimal. So after you get through the area the first time, like, why bother with combat?
Right, just use the mines.
Just gonna mine. I just only went and fought BTs because you get more crystals to use to buy stuff at the mines, right?
Right.
So I fell into that loop, and I kind of felt like bandit camps were just in the way. I didn't bother.
Yeah, anymore. You just go around them or whatever. Yeah. Run right through them.
Yeah, you just drive past them. It's no point, you know? So something was lost in that. Like, all of the elements are still there, but the logic that related them to one another in the first game is absent now. Right?
Yeah, it just feels like they kind of tweaked it to maybe make it, you know,
it's more accessible for sure.
And, you know, maybe they didn't want to take as much of a risk on the sequel. The first game was a huge risk, probably.
It was.
You know,
I'm sure they were not perfectly satisfied with how much money it made in the first period either.
Yeah, maybe.
But it's funny because in the weeks leading up to its launch, we were reading about Kojima, you know, testing the game and people liking it too much, and he dialed it back and stuff like that. But to me, it seems like it's not at all dialed back.
Yeah, to me, it seems like, I agree. Same thing. It doesn't feel like he dialed back on whatever.
No, it seems like he looked exactly at what people were complaining about and was like, all right, we're going to get rid of that. You know? So, I don't know. That to me is like a bit of a disappointment.
Yeah.
In a mechanical sense. You know?
Yes, yeah.
I think
it doesn't fully take away from the game. Like, it's still a great game.
No, it's still one of my favorite games.
To other games that have come out this year.
Yeah, there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
It's up there with my favorite games of all time for sure. But just because of my attachment to the first game, I can't help but feel like somewhat depressed by these changes.
That's the problem, right? The first game is such a masterpiece.
I think so.
It's so good that, like, you're kind of, when you go in to make a sequel to that game, you have to understand that it's going to be difficult to reach those same highs. So maybe they wanted to play it a little more safe. Yeah. Just in case. I don't know. But
I could see like many motivations for them to do what they did. Like, it all makes perfect sense, I guess I'm trying to say at the end of the day.
I'm fine with it. It just, I think at the end of the day, if all this is, you know, what we're saying, it does kind of paint the first as the better game.
Mechanically superior. In terms of gameplay and like how it's thought out and how you have to approach it, I think it's much more unique.
Yeah.
You know, and demanding. And for some
Obviously,
people, that obviously wasn't a great thing. And for the majority of critics, it looks like. But I'd say that that's a misunderstanding, really.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's less pleasurable for you, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have its own strengths.
Yeah.
And its own merits. Its own self-contained merits, right?
Exactly. More self-contained and thought out, you know.
I'm simply not of the view that a game has to be quote unquote fun. I don't know what that means. You know, hard narcotics could be fun, right? Like it doesn't mean anything about the quality of the thing as an experience, right? Or its own merits, right?
No.
So, or it's a different judgment. And the statement here is the first one, it expresses its ideas better with playable mechanics, I think.
Right.
You know? They have an idea of what the world is supposed to be like and what's supposed to be going on. And here's how it works. Even if it's inconvenient for you, you have to do it that way, right?
Uncompromisingly that.
Yeah,
like, you know,
that's right.
There's no...
This is a walking simulator. That's fine, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that in mechanical terms, that was lost in the sequel.
Yeah,
and like I said before, this one has a lot of merits in terms of its story and world building. It's the same world, so all of the same concepts are operative here. Like there's BTs and this relationship between life and death and stuff like that. One thing that I like is how they reassess some of the problems and ideas in the first game. Like the first game was about connecting people after the destruction of the world again, you know. There was even like some remarks about contemporary politics in the first game, which I thought were funny. There was like a guy called the Elder that you remember the Elder?
Yeah, I remember the Elder.
Yeah, and he, in one of his like chat logs, he talks to you about how like somebody before the Death Stranding wanted to build a wall along Mexico and how that pissed him off and it was a bad idea, you know. But in this game, incidentally, this is somewhat of a spoiler, I guess, but the same guy appears and he's like possessed by like this AI conglomerate that wants to like connect everybody together for the purpose of like controlling human existence entirely. Like in this game, again, this is a major spoiler, but the organization you're working to connect Australia for, they have like these totalizing ambitions. They want to connect everybody so that they can totally control human life and avoid the risk of a void out in the future. And obviously that's a bad thing. Like Sam doesn't want it to happen. You end up defeating them. And it's one of the major plot points, but it's nice how in the first game they presented this ambition of connecting everyone as a positive thing unambiguously. And then here they totally deconstruct that and show how like, you know, maybe it wasn't that great of a thing. It has some benefits, but it's ultimately, and they even have the same character who complained about it in the most strong and political terms appear as one of the bad guys, or as absorbed into the bad guys to present that as somewhat negative. So it's cool how they like reassess some of the ideas from the first game. In that sense, it's a worthwhile sequel, right? It's not merely like a throwaway thing or not a reiteration of the same ideas. They're re-examining them in a way. So I like that a lot, you know. But in terms of its
plus, for sure.
It's cool. That justifies its existence in many ways, to my estimation. And there's like, you know, this shifted focus. I think this one was more about characters. It's like more of a human story, I think, which I think also helps people connect with the game in a way that they probably had trouble with the first one, right?
That makes sense. I mean, just look at the cover and how it starts off with Lou and Sam.
It's a story about
very personal.
It's a story about an ad hoc family, like a bunch of lost people who find each other and help each other. But it's also a story about Sam's literal biological family, right? And how they relate to one another and how he, you know, I guess finds his family again, right? And they explain the backstory of some of the characters you were introduced to in the first one, like his therapist / girlfriend Lucy. You find out about her, you know. The first one too, it was about him and his father and all this stuff, but this one I think that is the central feature of the narrative. And I think that's not necessarily a weakness, like the same way that I would say, not like the same way I would say that, you know, the gameplay is, it's good, but it's diminished from the first one. Here, I'd say that's just a different focus, a different choice. I don't think it's necessarily weaker, but I think I like the first one better because it was a less human story to me. It felt more like about big ideas with people being dragged along, right? And they were more like, you know, uncompromising in their presentation of the ideas in the first game. They throw all these huge ideas at you. They don't bother to explain very much. You're just like drowning in all these like proper nouns all the time. You barely have any idea for the first while what the hell's going on.
Yeah, that's true. I do remember that sensation of playing the first one and just being like, wow, like what is happening here? And you get less of that in the second. It's more straightforward.
And there was even like a compendium of terms that you can go through at any time that explains exactly what everything is to you. But for me, like that kind of ambiguity, it conveys a sense of largeness. that the world is bigger than you, you know, that it's something that exists outside you and you got to fall into and try and understand on its own terms.
Yeah, that's sort of mysterious, you know, it's very, it's enticing, right? You like it.
I don't want like a D&D-esque like monster manual of terms, like explaining everything to me.
It gets too literal and boring, right? Like,
that's not cool, man.
You like when ideas are more abstract and weird, right?
It's good in any case. Like, I like the story, I like the characters in this one, but in the first game, I think it was more of a focus on the world building. The characters were along for the ride. They weren't so upfront in terms of like what the game was about. Right?
Yeah.
Here the game is about the characters. There the game was about stuff happening in the world. Kojima's view of being that he's presenting here, and the characters are just involved.
Sort of, yeah.
If it wasn't them, it would be somebody else. You couldn't say that about the second game. If it wasn't them, it would be a different story, right?
It's a good way to put it, actually. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
the story's definitely more.
Yeah. The first one being about like, you know, the Death Stranding and the extinction entity and like how people are like hurtling towards the end of the world. And
yeah, that's right.
You know, the extinction entity enlists Higgs to bring about the end of the world, but Sam changes her mind at the end. And, you know, in this game, it's Higgs is back trying to bring about the extinction again, but it's more about Sam's story and his family and stuff like that. So I think that the first one was more of an abstract and somewhat lofty vision than this one is. Yeah, it's much more character focused, much more easy to connect with what's going on in terms of the narrative, right?
Yeah, and it makes sense when you see the more positive reviews, people sort of more easily digesting it, getting into it, playing it, whatever. Whereas the first one, there was almost a bit of a barrier.
People called it like pretentious and, you know, what is this guy talking about?
Yeah.
Like but that to me was one of the things that made it special.
Like
that, yeah. It's not unlike Souls games in that respect. Like the world is bigger than you. You're just an observer and you have a finite perspective on it. And as you progress through the game, you uncover more about the world and connect with it more deeply. You know, I love that sensation of playing a game and feeling like the world is a fleshed out living thing. Right. That's what makes video games special to me, really, at the end of the day. The fact that in other mediums, you can't participate in the representation of a world like you can in video games.
Yeah, and your input changes that world immensely. Like we said, from beginning to end, you construct road zip lines. Like if you look at the map from the beginning of the game to the end, it's completely different. Like even other open world games don't really have that.
No, they don't.
You know, and if they do, would be just something that like happens after a story scene or something, not like that like dynamic, you know,
don't
actually
have the kind of
building
agency.
roads and exactly.
That's
You
right.
have so much agency as a player to tackle things however you want, build roads or don't if you don't want to. Like you can do whatever you want, right? Anyway, but and
even how they were willing to like something as little as the fact that you could like just inadvertently shoot a bandit and cause a void out and blow up your road network, right? Little things like that. Like they were uncompromising in their commitment to the ideas underpinning the world.
Yeah, right? One was hardcore in that way. Yeah.
This one is much less that. And for better or worse, like there's some good things about it. Like I said, you know, I think it's a fantastic game and I like the story. I even enjoy the gameplay. I love like just buzzing around in my truck, like building roads, listening to the awesome soundtrack. Right, it was a great experience. I like the boss fights. I like how the game ends. You know, it's all very like optimistic and beautiful. Like it's a good game, but at the end of the day, something is missing that the first game had. That being in the first place, the uncompromising commitment to the world building and the idea behind the game and how that translates into gameplay. And in the second place, I think that being the way that the world building itself, not the characters, took center stage. You know, the ideas Kojima had about reality and human nature were paramount in the first game. Here it's about a cast of characters instead. Right. So yeah, something's lost to me. Like they're both fantastic games. 2 is one of my favorite games of all time still, but I think 1 is definitely better. To me.
Yeah, it'd probably be hard pressed to argue against that. Obviously I want to finish 2 first, but it seems like, you know, I at least agree with what you're saying.
I mean, it's funny because the same reasons I'm saying this is the reason it reviewed better. So I guess
exactly that's what I was about to say, is that it definitely reviewed better, and that these are some of the reasons, because it at the end of the day is easier to, you know, get into, and it is
relate to the story
right? But less of a struggle rather, but
I think that explains like why people subjectively receive it better, but it doesn't speak to the merits of the thing in itself, right? It's like saying, you know, food tastes good, but it's not healthy. Something like that analogously, right? It doesn't describe its interior characteristics to say that you like it more. Right?
That's right.
So I don't know. That's my view on if 2 is better than 1. My take is no, it's not, but both are excellent games nonetheless.
Yeah. You'd enjoy both for sure. Or at least if you enjoyed one, you'd enjoy the other.
Yeah.
It really is. They're both incredible games.
They are.
You know, you're not missing out.
They're quite different, but they're both excellent games. Yeah. In any case, I hope they move on to something new. The next Kojima game.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't even think we would ever see a Death Stranding 2, and honestly I kind of didn't even want it, but here we are, and I don't regret it.
No,
you know, I'm enjoying my time
yeah.
with them. I'm happy it exists as well.
Yeah.
But I think it is time
something new
to move on.
Something new.
Yeah.
In any case, thank you guys very much for tuning in. Maybe we'll be back to talk about Wu Chang next time.
Ooh, yeah.
Take care.